Welcome to Red Hoop Talk, the Native News and Talk Show. I'm Shannon O'Loughlin, citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and your illustrious hostess here on Red Hoop Talk. I hope you all are enjoying your Friday afternoon, and you're enjoying my new hairdo. It's very indigenous, if you didn't know. But I am wearing my special Chickasaw earrings. We have turtle shells in the fore in honor of our guest, Miss GENA TIMBERMAN. But let's talk a little bit about the news. As you know, I'm coming to you from the head of the serpent, or near Washington, D.C., and the original homelands of the Piscataway peoples. There is some more land grabbing and land damaging efforts happening out in Nevada, in that area of Indian country. The lithium mining proposal in northern Nevada is threatening Paiute and Shoshone cultural lands. This is an interesting issue, right? Because we want more environmentally sustainable solutions over petroleum-based extractive industries. But here we have a lithium mine within original homelands of Paiute and Shoshone that is going to be dug up as a big open pit mine for electric cars and such. What happened was, during the Trump administration, he fast-tracked a lot of these mines, and it happened during the pandemic in 2020. And so when the consultation letter from BLM went to the Fort McDermott Paiute tribe, their offices were closed. So they hadn't any notice and weren't able to comment on the proposed mine. So we have some major issues brewing out there in Nevada. I hope you all will be watching. And hey, please, everyone, shout out from wherever you are watching. We're coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So let us know where you're at in Indian country, and if you're affiliated with any nations, we'd love to get to know you better. And let's move over to our friends at Native News Online. Let me pull up my screen so we can see what's going on in Indian country. Check this out. Our friends at Native News Online, online.net, usually gives us a breakdown on what's going on in Indian country on a weekly basis, and gives us special stories throughout. It looks like MHA Nation is having an interpretive center grand opening that will be great for folks up north there. There's a virtual art talk with Juanita Growing Thunder Fogarty and Jessa Ray Growing Thunder on Saturday. You have to purchase tickets. They're $5, but it's virtual, and it's an art talk with those artists. Mother Tongue Film Festival presents Waikiki now through Sunday, May 16th. You can register, and registration is limited. So if you're going to check it out, there's a trailer there on nativenewsonline.net, and some other comedy and other things going on this weekend. Check it out over there at nativenewsonline.net. And I don't know if you all know that it's also International Museum Day on the 18th. And why should we care that it's International Museum Day? And I will tell you, because it gives us an opportunity to let the museums know that we them and that we have expectations on how they are going to work with Indigenous peoples all around the world. And so this isn't about just sharing and collaborating, but it's also about making sure that they are respectful to the care and to the repatriation of our ancestors' cultural objects and other sacred objects that they have in their collections that have been stolen and looted over time. So on International Museum Day on the 18th, please be sure you reach out to a museum near you and let them know it's time to decolonize and repatriate their Native American sensitive items and ancestors' remains. Hey, JD out there on YouTube land, it's good to have you out there from Colorado and the lands of those nations there. Sarah LeClaire, nice to see you out Kansas Potawatomi. Nice to have you there. So let's, without further ado, I want to introduce you to a wonderful woman I've known for quite some time. I consider her a sister in the Choctaw Nation, also a sister in law, policy, arts, and culture. She's doing some great work out there in Indian country. I want to introduce you all to my friend GENA TIMBERMAN. Hello there. How are you?
Hello, Shannon.
Or Halito.
Halito. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's truly an honor and a blessing to connect with you, my Choctaw sister, and especially a great way to end this week, to be connected, and always great to be connected with you. And just want to say thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. You're always welcome here, GENA. And it's always good to talk to someone back in Oklahoma. I miss it. And in fact, I was going to let you know, I was thinking about Seminole, Oklahoma today. And I don't know how much you've gotten to travel to Seminole, Oklahoma in your days, but there used to be a roller rink. And that was the only thing, besides the Sonic Dragon Main Street, was the roller rink.
Right.
And I used to roller skate the hell out of that place. And I just got a set of brand new roller skates that I'm going to try out this weekend. I wish you were here with me, or I wish I was out there with you. And maybe we could do some roller skating out there around Oklahoma and see if they still have the rink in Seminole.
Yeah, man. Now that we can get on a plane, heck, I would fly out to do that for you with you. So that would be a great gift for me. Thank you.
Well, come on out. We could go to the National Museum of the American Indian. We could go on the the mall, Washington Mall, and roller skate the hell out of that place.
Absolutely. I'm a Choctaw girl from Mustang, Oklahoma, and we had a place growing up called Laser Skates.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was the jam. I loved it. I mean, I could shoot the duck, with the best of them.
My favorite was always there was like some kind of couples game or something where
couple skate. No.
Yeah.
I
think it was almost like a Sadie Hawkins thing or something like that, where the girls would get to pick the boys, or the boys would get to pick the girls. I don't know, but it was the only time where I felt socially like I was normal. It was on roller skates.
Roller skating. I love roller skating. You can't beat that.
So, all right. So let's bring it home. So you grew up in Mustang.
I did. Many of my family members are from Southeast Oklahoma, Choctaw, and I, from Tuskahoma area, Yanish, from that Buffalo Valley area, Watson, Oklahoma. And I grew up in Mustang near Oklahoma City. And, Oklahoma for me growing up was like that place I couldn't wait to get out. But once I was out, I couldn't wait to get back. And it's home for me. So I've been really fortunate to be able to work with Indian law and policy in DC for a brief period. And I love, I'm an Indian girl that does Indian things. And so I really appreciate that here in Oklahoma. And so it's a real gift to be welcomed onto your show. And I really appreciate the great work that you do in Indian country. So thank you very much. It's important. And I really appreciate you bringing up the Museum Day. I've served, I'm past president of the Oklahoma Museums Association. And it's so important. Our museums are the vehicles through which we speak from a first person Native perspective today, to share our stories and to create an awareness and understanding of who we are as Native people. And it's so important. So I really appreciate the advocacy. And if anyone can call their Congress, their congressional leaders to, express the importance of supporting IMLS funding and other avenues of funding, and to express their perspectives, it's really important. It's really important.
Absolutely. So take us on a journey here. I remember growing up in Oklahoma, and what a museum was for me back then was basically finding a little cardboard sign or something like that that said Indian burials this way. And oftentimes it was in someone's garage or backyard. You give the guy $1 and you'd see, full on skeletal remains and other items that people have found, mostly Caddo,
Right.
in many of the areas. But so that was my first impression of what museums were. And I never had much interaction with what museums, definitely what they are today, but what they could be, especially for Indian people. So what was your experience, and how did you get on this path?
So thank you. I felt very similar in terms of what museums were about, very violative of Native people, very third person perspective. We have many of our precious, mound. I appreciate your background with the mound. We're people of the mound, and those mounds are where we've gathered to basically to share, to trade, to express ourselves with artwork, for spiritual reasons, for community. And we would go to the river to build. And today, I'm happy to say that we're building museums. We're going to the river, especially here in Oklahoma City, to build. And we're 21st century mound builders. So I really appreciate the fact that we've been able to redefine and take ownership of our stories and how we express ourselves in our museums today. So I felt very similar to you. I really identify with that. And, there's a renaissance happening across Indian country today, not just in Oklahoma, but across the nation, as you know. I had the great pleasure of working with the late, God rest his precious soul, Chief Pyle with Choctaw Nation. Mm-hmm. And he really I helped plan the Choctaw Cultural Center that's going to open later this year. And he gave our team the opportunity to travel around Indian country and visit as many tribal museums and cultural centers. And what became really apparent is that there is this evolution in how museums and cultural centers are being planned by Native people to not just tell our story from a first person perspective, but also serve people, to have tribal cultural services that are being delivered through the museums and centers, and that they become places of connection to culture. And so we visited 24 museums across the country. And in Oklahoma, we have about 13, I may be off by one or two, but about 13 tribal museums and cultural centers. And this year we'll open the First Americans Museum. And it's really an exciting time. If there's one plug I can give, is for more Native people to go into museum studies. That's something that we're really struggling to retain, to identify Native people in museum studies. And so thank you for sharing the videos. And First Americans Museum, Oklahoma, all across the continent, Native people tribes have experienced this uprooting and dislocation of our communities and our cultures. And we refer to this as a time of moving fires. And in Oklahoma and across Indian country, as we all know, the fires still burn. Our cultures adapt and we endure. And we have the opportunity today, as resilient Native people, to tell our stories, to engage with the community, to create that awareness and understanding of who we are, past and present. And in Oklahoma, as many of you know, there's this history of, just a few tribes had an indigenous presence. And then at one time, there were 67 tribes, resulting from the Forced Federal Removal Acts of Congress. And today there are 39 tribes, and there's a dramatic story to tell that begins before statehood. Many of our education our books at school, if they even say anything at all, they mention everything's relative to statehood, or there's one trail of tears, or there's one journey into Oklahoma. And many people don't realize there were about 67 different tribal perspective journeys in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason, especially as Choctaw people and for many tribes, that we still sing our songs of journey and removal, because we're still on that journey. And if you look at the First Americans Museum, there's a large mound. And, we've always been progressive people as Native people. And
here, I've got your
journey,
pictures.
yes. We go to the river to build at the intersection of I-35 and I-40 at the crossroads of America. We still go to the river to build in dramatic ways, and to trade, and to share and express ourselves in our artwork, and for economic development. And we've always built, so you see that large kind of sculpture coming out, that main piece that will be covered with glass. And I wish I had, for this presentation, a more recent picture, but everything's changing so rapidly as we get ready for the opening that will occur in September. And want to invite everyone to come to the opening on September 18th and 19th of this year. And that structure is honoring basically the Wichita Grass House, one of the indigenous tribes of Oklahoma, the Wichitas. And we wanted to welcome people into a home. And so we wanted to honor the structural integrity of a Native home and make people feel welcome, and create a safe middle ground where we can engage in a dialogue about who we are and our realities, past and present, and where we aspire to go in the future. So it's a really exciting time in Indian country, but in Oklahoma. Been really blessed. I started working with the museum project in 1999. I went to the University of Oklahoma Law School, and I came out, was working for a firm here in Oklahoma City, and met then Senator Enoch Kelly Haney, full-blood Seminole artist, as many people know, responsible for the beautiful artwork, the guardian that adorns the sculpture that adorns the top of our state capitol dome, and became friends with him. And it was really a time that was a really interesting time whereby the state was really interested in developing an economic development project that would spark tourism and also educate people on the history of tribes in Oklahoma. We've had great product for, with the National Cowboy, Western Heritage Museum, and as the horse, like capital of the world. But studies were showing that, we have this rich history with American Indian people and Native cultures, that we really didn't have a product. And the state really aspired to create that product and experience, and working with the State Department of Tourism and the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. And it was a tenuous time with tribes, because there were great negotiations, a great deal of negotiations occurring with different compacts, with gaming, motor fuels, tobacco, back in the day. And in 1994, the state created, under the leadership of Senator Haney, who was then the chairman of appropriations, which was very helpful, and then the late Senator Kerr, a bipartisan effort to create a state agency with the sole mission to develop a museum to tell the story of tribes and how tribes came to call what is now Oklahoma home. And Oklahoma, in our Choctaw language, means red people. Okla is people, red, Homa. And so it's about time that we create a place to tell that story. And started working on the project in 1999. And, that was an abandoned oil field. The site that you just shared had about 60 active wells on it at one time. So a great deal of environmental remediation occurred, working with the tribes, a number of blessing experiences to prepare the site to be redisturbed and to be rehabilitated. And I went to some of our elders at the time and asked, what should we do to prepare the site for it to undergo construction? And we had a lot of healing activity that was going on. And one of our elders said to me, that site is, that land is like an elder that just wants to feel better. And you know how our people, our grandparents want to feel better is when they have their people around them. And so we had this grand, like we called it the ground, instead of a groundbreaking, a ground blessing ceremony, and invited tribes all across the state to participate in blessing activities, in song and dance, in public ceremony. Our beloved Muskogee people created a fire from dawn to dusk and kept the fire burning. And we will, and those ashes will be incorporated symbolically and literally in the experience that we will have moving toward the opening, as well as the interpretive experience we have in the exhibitions as well. And so I used to think of that site that we're building this museum on is as an elder at one time, and today I think of it as it's taken on a sense of new life. Mm-hmm. And it's really special to me, and it's been a journey for me. You know, it's been a really trying journey over periods of time, but it's been such a rewarding one. And I've been so blessed to work on the Choctaw Cultural Center. But to your question, how things change is that Native people take ownership, and we incorporate our different cultural perspectives and experiences. And you know, it's interesting to me when we talk about work and people will say, well, don't take it personally. But in Indian country, as you know, it's hard not to take things personally because it's about your family and about your history. And it's about your rights and opportunities that affect us every day. You know, it really is personal. So,
yeah. And look at the diversity. So you have this great picture of the 39 First American Tribes of Oklahoma. Look at the diversity that is in Oklahoma, with all of these tribes from all over the country.
You know, in Oklahoma, there are, I mean, it's incredible. And each tribe has their own story, as you know, of removal and relocation. I mean, you look at the number of treaties signed by the Delaware, the Potawatomi, and that, I mean, it's crazy. And to think about what that meant and the difficult decisions that tribal leaders were making solely, like, I mean, I get chills, like just saying that, like the hair stands up on the back of my neck. Just in the interest of keeping people together. And so when you and I were talking pre-show the other day recently about being connected to culture, that's our obligation, and it's our responsibility as Native people to stay connected, because our leaders made and our ancestors, you know, committed to these incredible feats of decision and the trying experiences for our benefit. And so we are a part of a disconnected chain that owes it to those coming after us to continue that and to share and to tell our story. And that gives gives opportunity for healing. Yeah. If there's any time for healing, especially this year, and we can talk, but the diversity of tribes all across the continent, you know, there's no place like Oklahoma. I say that Oklahoma is a collision of cultures, but we have the opportunity here to be a collaboration of cultures working together and connecting spheres of influence. And it means so much in terms of the cultural environment, but also to the economic impact that tribes are making. I know that I don't know what the most recent number, I feel like I'm so much off the radar this year. What's the most recent number? But over 10 billion to the economy annually. I mean, it's crazy. But, you know, tribes have an opportunity to not only impact the infrastructure here, roads and bridges, but education and healthcare and housing and underserved rural communities that would otherwise not have opportunities that they would have without tribal partners, tribes partnering with the state. And you know, you have like the Potawatomis, Citizen Potawatomi Nation. They're the largest employer within their county, and it's incredible. Choctaw Nation, you know, the southeast, basically quarter section of the state. And so we have a real opportunity it's a real intertribal environment that is unique. And those, like I said, those fires they still burn. and we express ourselves in really beautiful and dramatic and meaningful ways today.
Oh, for sure. And when I go back, I'm always amazed with the shape of our little rural towns across Oklahoma have become completely different
Right,
because of tribal economic development.
right,
And I don't think people really understand gaming and what gaming has done, not just for Indian country and
right,
tribes, but for neighbors. And
right,
the necessary economic development that has brought in places that didn't have economic development before, or had been kind of destroyed after oil, like Seminole was. Um, but towns with new fire engines that never would have seen a new fire truck. My family was from the Idabel, south of Idabel,
right.
right on the Red River there.
Yeah,
And
my grandmother went to Wheelock in that area.
yeah, my great grandma did as well. So, um, and I mean, people don't understand how important Indian gaming is to even helping to revitalize culture. I mean, and you need money to do
Mhm.
this work that we're doing, to not just benefit Indian country, but it's a benefit, broadly and globally, to be able to educate people about who Native people are, because no one else is doing it, right?
Right.
We've got to do it. So how have you seen the education through museums develop over the last 10 years, and the work you've been doing? Has it increased? Is the way in which things are taught and exhibited different?
That's a good question. I appreciate that. Since 2010, since roughly around 2008, 2010, we started noticing a great decline in funding for, we were in a recession and have been, a great decline in funding to schools, particularly in the rural areas. Um, and it's caused some like very creative partnerships. We've also experienced across the country, as everyone knows, a decline in funding for museums and libraries and the arts. And it's interesting, if you look at, projects and other decades of recession, that's a time when the arts were fed, and the arts have been starved for many years. And so it's been a really interesting time that I've seen, where you have humanities funding from trickle down from what little funding we need into the Oklahoma Humanities Council, and some really interesting projects that have been seeded for public programming that not only feed a museum's public program, but also provide materials and opportunity for educators and for teachers. Without the tribes that are providing funding, even transportation for some students and others, there are no field trips otherwise happening
Right.
now. There are great partnerships that I primarily see with Cherokee Nation, Chickasaw Nation, Choctaw Nation, tribes across the state, up with the Northeast Intertribal Council of Oklahoma, that where the educational systems are on life support by tribal, not only just contributions, but really innovative opportunities, like with Cherokee Nation taking on some of the language projects and supplying, technology with the Cherokee syllabary. It's really cool. It's very cool what's happening. And then plugging that into the natural partnerships and opportunities that are afforded by museums and cultural centers. It's really exciting, and it makes me really happy about makes me really positively optimistic about what we can anticipate in the future, given the leadership that we have today. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that we can maintain relationships with state and federal entities that we've had some mixed experiences, but that can maximize and connect those spheres of influence. Because when one community is suffering, we're all suffering. I just sat on a racial equity, it was really racial inequity panel yesterday, and we were talking about, when a community or culture is suffering, it's really
Uh-oh, we lost your sound.
but had
There we
something
go.
come in and it clicked for a minute. But we're all suffering, and so if we can connect, again, our spheres of influence, maximize the opportunities afforded by tribes, it's really it's really incredible.
Yeah. And what is so wonderful to me about, and I'd like to hear about your experience more about you traveling across Indian country and going to museums and cultural centers, because we do it differently. Like, I was always intimidated by these big marble
Right.
structures that were always seemed to be designed where, you had modern art at the top and you had this thing called primitive art, or uh, archaeological, or those kind of evolutionary discussions happening in the basement, and then it kind of progresses up every level as
Right.
you travel through a museum, right? And our museums are different, and they're grassroots, and they bring everyone in from the community. It's not a place of exclusion or for people with resources. It's for community. And so when you were traveling, was that consistent around Indian country?
Yes, the inclusion, like the grassroots inclusion.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, from the tribal museums, and cultural centers. What's interesting is that there were several tribes, Chickasaw Nation being one of them, where, but this was a common conversation that I would have with a number of tribes across the country, is that, I remember Governor Anatobi saying something to me is like, when the tribal government started, supporting more of their cultural programs through their governmental system, that it brought the traditional people, like historically, it's like governmental people, grassroots people, like traditional people, the government people. And then it began to bridge that and bring them together. And I heard that kind of comment with many tribal leaders across the country of, we often silo, what's happening in our museums or cultural centers as the cultural, and then you have the governmental, and then you have the economic, health, like education. But a museum and cultural center, if I think done well, has the opportunity to bring them together and to strengthen the community. I think providing services through the museum, for example, I wrote the program brief for Choctaw Nation, and I interviewed every division, did a focus group. I interviewed about 1,200 people through different surveys, in-person focus groups, one-on-ones. This is one example. I met with our family services, one of our family services representatives, and I asked her, so, we were talking about foster care. There at the time were about 300 Choctaw children within the foster care system.
Wow.
And, she said a lot of what they do was, and they are warriors, I tell you. They do a lot of trainings for foster parents. And so where do the trainings take place? They take place, they could take place at the casino, in one of the conference rooms, or somewhere. And I said, well, so we started rethinking and like unpackaging like what we were thinking about with museums and cultural centers that serve Native people and tribes. And we were thinking we need to plan larger gathering spaces for meetings and have non-traditional museum hours, so that after work, perhaps the trainings could take place in the cultural center. And then the children, you could have separate children's programming occurring in the children's area after hours, and maybe a meal is served, so the cafe or something would work differently. So, I think that, it's, so I really see that difference with that experience with tribes, and bridging the grassroots and with the government and with the political leaders, which I think is so important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad to hear that about the Choctaw Nation and how they're looking at their cultural center and museum. So, going across country, were there any particular facilities that kind of stuck out to you in
Yeah,
your
I really
visits?
yeah, oh, of course. I mean, many. I mean, there are a lot of tribes doing great things. I loved visiting Tulalip,
Yes.
up at their Hebo Cultural Center up there and connecting. They had teasers. I think that there needs like the different tribal assets should be speaking the same language. And I love that they have, teasers to get people at the casino, in the hotel over to the cultural center, to their heritage center, to the center, and to get, and other tribes, I mean, are doing great things. And so, here's what's so interesting is that we have an opportunity to really impact Native and non-Native people, which is important, and share who we are by these safe middle ground opportunities. And those middle ground opportunities come through film, they come through food. It's like where we all feel safe going to learn about something.
Right.
Sometimes festival, music, sports, museums. And so, as much as we can engage our tribal assets to create those safe middle ground opportunities, we're going to maximize the dialogue and the conversation that we have, that really has meaningful impact in short-term and long-term ways.
Wow. So, I guess are you able to give in any way kind of a sneak peek of what's going to happen at First America's Museum, like for the Choctaw Nation in particular? Like, um, uh, will there be stories told that will be pre-Oklahoma, or will they all come from just upon arrival in Oklahoma, those nations, and also include the original people who
Yes, so
inhabited the land?
absolutely. So to talk about Choctaw Cultural Center,
Yeah.
do you have an image that you can share? I think
Yes,
I
thank you.
think it's that fourth one maybe I sent you. So
Let me pull it.
Choctaw Cultural Center, it's on a great area of the property. The team up there, and Stacy Halfman is the executive director, is awesome. Shout out to Stacy, Choctaw sister. It's going to be incredible. And what's interesting is we've worked on the First Americans Museum for decades. And it's interesting when an owner really wants to finish, like a tribe wants to finish their own project, it can go up fast. It has amazed me, astounded me, like how awesome and quickly the construction and the development and the design has occurred for Choctaw Nation. And the elements of our cultural symbols and stories and ways have been incorporated not only into the design, as you can see, but also into, not just the materials and the design, but in the progression through the experience. And the museum will explore ancient ways of Choctaw people. There's a beautiful mound that will be on site.
Oh, wow.
There's a village. There will be stickball programs that will take place. There's a children's area that will have a Luksi, or the turtle. That's basically you enter into the turtle and one could hear stories about our people and all the awesome stories related to our value system. And so I'm really proud of that story, our Choctaw Cultural Center. I'm really proud of that experience and for being a part of that. And with the First Americans Museum, we're doing many similar things, large outdoor, it's almost a 300-acre site.
Yeah.
150,000 square foot building. Much of it, we went to the river to build in big dramatic ways, just as the times of the equinox and solstice informed our ceremonies for many tribes, not just our Mississippian people and people of the Southeast. But we, for many tribes, that it informed times of harvest and ceremony and our realities, and everything about the design, which I love at the First Americans Museum, is intentional. For example, the arms, the gates that open or that will welcome, on opening the visitor, They align with the sun at times of solstice. The setting sun on the peak of the mound aligns during the winter solstice. Yeah, the vernal equinox. I mean, everything is intentional. So I'm really excited to have programming that educates people on that experience. But we have one wing of the First Americans Museum that will be open to the public and free of charge, and cafe and art gallery that was, the design and the operation was inspired by the Heard Museum successful operation of their gift shop and gallery, and the fantastic relationships that they've developed with Native artists and others. We have an area for performing arts on that side. It's just it'll just be a great place for exchange and conversation and programming, and something where you could come and get a cup of coffee or come for a nice meal. And so on the other side of the museum, you have an area that's our Tribal Nations Gallery, which is our signature gallery. Two things to talk about the preview. One is a progression through the space that is an area of crossroads, which I'm really excited. It's the kind of the welcoming signature piece. It's the area where you can make a decision whether you go into, one art gallery or you go up top on the second floor to experience what we'll talk about in a partnership in a minute with the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian, or you would go through the main Tribal Nations Gallery. But it's an area where, part of my job has been to conduct the tribal consultation along with the team and help project manage the experiences and communication with tribes, which has been so challenging over pandemic when so many offices are closed, or when we need images from different institutions like federal and tribal and other that were shut down. So it's been crazy, and some things we didn't get, but we got a lot, and we're so excited about it. But where you can see the welcoming and greeting and tribes, not only the words that we see their tribal name like on a map, but you can also see their name in their traditional language. Miamia, Choctaw, Tsatsistas with Cheyenne. I mean, with every tribe. And then with the greeting, we have an audio experience where you can hear tribal language and their greeting, information about tribe. We also have about the tribes information about their geographic location and identity, but also images about who they are, with like contemporary images of people that are all around us doing incredible things. From people that UKB, United Kituwa Band of Cherokee Indians, they sent a beautiful picture of stickball and of playing stickball, and we have great images that span from couples that are like one couple that welcomed a baby into their family, and it's just awesome. So anyway, that's like the welcoming signature piece. We have literally this incredible origins theater that it's a progression from ancient times. So you have the welcoming experience, like the crossroads. You have an origins theater that is working with artist Jerry Redcorn, who's Caddo. It's basically a theater that's a giant Caddoan pot. It's insane. It's incredible. I mean, I'm like, geek out. I go in and I stare at it like so lovingly, like I'm just in love with it. But you could go in and you hear some different origin stories from tribes from different regions of Oklahoma with diverse cultural backgrounds, to get a perspective that, our origin stories aren't just myth, that they still inform us today. They give us the code by which and value by which we operate today as Native people, and keep us grounded and centered and in our identity of who we are. And it's so cool. I cannot wait for everyone to see it and for you to see it, Shannon. I'd love to walk you through the experience. And then we start out with, basically, there's 3 major veins of timeline experiences that are a timeline, which is like the spine of a historic, linear timeline. But then we have something connected to it, which are these value circles, that you have the historic experiences in 3 different eras. Pre-removal, removal period, and then statehood, like removal 1830s to about statehood, and then statehood to today. And so in the pre-removal, you have ancient trade routes, the sophisticated nature of tribes. We have accompanying value circles that you go and you not just hear about the historic experiences, but the human experiences of what, stories and of, depending on the time, accounts of, what was happening, stories passed down, how sophisticated tribes were with trade and why. And then we also have these listening stations where you could hear song and spoken words of storytelling about why the bison and the corn are important, for example. And it's just so cool. Layered experiences that share not only the historic perspectives, but the human perspectives.
Right.
And then, so the second era is removal. That is, it's a powerful experience. The exhibit team that we worked with, Ralph Applebaum Associates, they're responsible for design of the exhibitions for African American Museum on the Mall, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, Clinton Library, the Obama Library, just to name a few projects. So that gives you an idea of the caliber of the team that we've been working with to develop the authentic and emotional experiences that will be delivered there. So you have the removal experience, power experiences. Hang on just a second. I'm like, can you see me still? I'll just keep talking.
No, we can't see you. We can hear you though.
Hold on. Sorry about that. Hold on. There you go. There you go. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my phone. So you have the removal experience, and then we have an area of statehood to today. And it's really interesting about what statehood has meant. It's about how we have taken like an ownership and telling our stories with our cultural centers and museums, but also how we advocate for our rights and express ourselves in contemporary artwork. And talks about also just some of the more recent experiences in environmental advocacy, as well as missing and endangered Indigenous women in Indian country. And it's really interesting, the civil rights movements that have occurred over time and Indian people's role in that. So then we go through, like, I wish I had this whole PowerPoint, so that's another time, but I can't wait to walk you through it. So then we have an area that you'll walk through where it's just a soundscape with these beautiful benches. There's a lot of heavy material in some of these era pieces. So we wanted the visitor to have an opportunity to sit and listen to music and to hear songs. The drum is important, but our gospel music with many of our communities is important. Sounds of nature. And so it's really a soundscape that one could sit and relax and take a break before moving into some more lighthearted topics. One area that one would enter is around kitsch and also stereotypes and how we're viewed, in popular culture. And it's really cool. We have an Indian house in this area. We have a TV program where you're basically changing television programs to see how we've been portrayed in media. We have an area that you can sit in basically it's like called powwow van, and you literally sit, and it's like if you got into a van and went across Indian country to see the different landscapes and social activity that's happened on any given Saturday throughout the state of Oklahoma, from stickball and Choctaw Nation to Sack and Fox powwow to Ponca powwow to Comanche fair to all across the state. And so it's really exciting. We've been working with a great media team, filmmakers like Stephen Paul Judd and others, that Fire Thief out of Tulsa. They're awesome. Been really, Batwin and Robin out of New York. They're insane. Just so talented and great. And then we go through an area of sports and games that really shares the prowess and power and the cultural experience. And I guess the cultural rationale behind our success and involvement and why sports were so important, that came out of boarding school experiences and what that meant to feel like a team and this great, I don't know, it's like a I don't know, a leveling, it's like a leveling field of, you know, it was like a great equalizer, you know, for Native people to participate at different times, like Jim Thorpe and others, but also goes through more contemporary, like Indian boxers. And we have, you know, like Ryan Dirt Eaters, great rodeo, you know, a lot of great Oklahoma stickball. We have a great stickball sculpture. I had to drive around in July, which was not easy, collecting 5 different sets which was awesome because I would like try to safely distance and like masked up and everything, like people across Seminole, Choctaw Nation, Chickasaw Nation, Creek Nation, Cherokee. Like, yeah, there were 5 sets of stickball sticks from communities.
Wow.
And we created a great media piece along with a great sculpture out of the stickball sticks. So then we go into Warriors, which is our veterans experience, honoring, you know, that, you know, the like honoring female warrior veterans, but, you know, honoring our longstanding tradition and commitment of Native people, you know, that's higher than any other community culture in our nation of commitment to our armed forces, but also the Oaks among us, which are the extraordinary people around us every day that are making, you know, these long-standing prideful strides in sciences, and like John Harrington, the astronaut, you know, Chickasaw astronaut, as well as, you know, Walter Echo Hawk and others. And so we have an exit experience that really honors, and it kind of ends that gallery, but it's just really paying, you know, respect to like the ways that we give thanks and we thank the visitor for attending. But, you know, I will say this is, you know, it's not just a content or fact dump, you know, just like facts and figures. But what I really appreciate about the approach that the team took, and we've been committed to for so many years, is that we took a very value-based approach, that we were informed by what we call the 4 R's. You know, it's like respect, relationship, reciprocity, our exchange of giving and sharing with one another, but also responsibilities we have. And we've kind of tested different designs with that. And can we share this? And can we talk about this? And I think that that's so important because it resonates not only with all Native cultures, but with all humans. And so I think that no matter what tribal background that you're from, or whatever cultural background, Native and non-Native, that this will be an identifiable experience in a way that, again, resonates and also connects people.
Yeah. Wow. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, thank you. Again, like the opening is September 18th and 19th. Like,
yeah, it's coming up quick.
Be my guest for the activities.
Someone in our chat said that you're doing a great interview. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
And then I had to respond. I said, yes, she's a traditional style Choctaw speaker.
Thank
you know,
you.
like you go on and the sentence never ends and the sentence never ends.
You're like,
that's traditional.
Much to the pain and chagrin of my family members now. Thank you so much. Yucky.
So, okay, so let's set this aside. I'd like to know, before we end our time together, I want to get to know you better. I want our audience to get to know you a little bit better, and your path. How did you? Because you went to law school, right?
Yes.
But before that, I mean, what happened that puts you in the place you're in now? What were the decisions or what were the defining moments in your life that moved you towards wanting to seek a law degree and then going into the areas with museum and the arts that you have?
Thank you. You know, I always feel, sometimes I joke that I feel like I've been like Forrest Gumped into things, like different things. You know, it's just like, I'm just like, okay, you're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, if you would have told me, I would have been planning museums or, you know, other cultural projects. And it's also, I did some work with the Chiefs of planning their Native Heritage Day, which has some, you know, I'm grateful for the benefits that have occurred recently with fan behavior changes that have been and rules that have been implemented, but plan that. But it was just like me running into someone talking about something. It's like, so I get Forrest Gumped into a lot of things.
Yeah.
But to tell you a little bit about my background in history is that, my grandmother went to Wheelock and had a lot of friends and just in the community. And she went to the Angie Smith Church here in Oklahoma City, and, just intertribal relationships where I grew up with and just how Oklahoma is, particularly Oklahoma City, is, the sense of urban intertribalness that, and I worked so I've had a comfort level being around tribes I didn't really necessarily grow up around, and going to their events and activities, but I didn't culturally belong to. But so I have a comfort level with that. But I will say this is I was a runner in high school. I'm like, I wish I still was, but anyway, that's another story. But I'm now going to be a roller skater. No, but,
yes, we are.
But I competed, and I was a part of the Wings of America team, which, a lot of Indian people that may be listening. I was part of the Southern Plains team, and they had like Wings of the Southwest and Wings of the Northern Plains, Southern Plains, awesome Wings of the Great Lakes, and different. So I got to meet a lot of different Indian people from all over the country through competitive running. And this was a program, Wings was a program sponsored by the Earth Circle Foundation. But Nike at a time, if you recall the play, you used to see play, it was like Participate in the Lives of America's Youth. They had this initiative and funding, and there was, an initiative for Indian country that they helped fund Wings. And so I had the awesome opportunity as a young person to teach running and fitness camps. So like Chance Rush and other people, like some other DJ Vanis. Shout out to my Indian brothers out there that we used to teach these running and fitness camps and leadership camps. And it was a way about teaching about, wellness and well-being in Indian country. But we would travel from reservation to reservation all over the country. And we had so much fun in the summertime. And so I got to really have a keen awareness of different tribal cultures and communities and realities for Indian people. But also at Oklahoma State, I was the Indian desk at the Multicultural Development Assessment Center, working with Dr. Pete Koser. And I got to see so many of my relationships that people I know did, or it happened at OSU, where they just came through the office to just get some advice or counseling, and we would connect them to programs. And I worked with the Native American Student Association, and then was the president in law school of the Native American Law Student Association. So what I'm saying is, I've really had a wonderful gift of opportunity that has been a gift to me to be around so many different people of different tribes, and has really served me on a path to do what I do today. And, representing the state on an Indian project has not been easy for many reasons. And I have PTSD from some aspects of it now. But it gave me a comfort level, just like, today I'm just going to get in the car and I'm just going to show up and just go talk to people. And I think that, I really appreciate our conversation about before the show about, just how we connect to each other. And it's more important than ever, especially after a global pandemic. But, of staying connected, we are tribal peoples, but I've always appreciated and have been received an energy and the motivation when I've been able to get out into the community and our cultural environments and connect with people. And that's given me more motivation when I needed it than anything. And so I'm so happy that things are starting to open up, that we're able to connect, whether it's, this aspect, what this pandemic has also done is like opened our creativity up to how to connect even more than we were before through technology like this. And so I really appreciate that. But I'm ready to see you in person.
Yes, me too. It's been too long. It's been way too long.
Absolutely.
So you have to tell us about the artwork behind you.
Yes. So the Luksi, my business is Luksi Group. And the Luksi is the turtle in Choctaw. And for many tribes, tribes revere the turtle as a great cultural symbol, of course. But, good fortune, good health, reliable, what the turtle was thousands of years ago still is today. And so my friend, Choctaw artist, DG Smalling, shout out to DG, a great Choctaw artist. He's really well known for his continuous line art where he never takes his pen or, you know, off the piece. And he did this for me, and I commissioned it. And I was like, I just want a great, you know, like just Luksi piece in my home. And I'll tell you what, I just, you know, if just one thing I have to say is support our Native artists. Like, they need it now more than ever. And it just is such a beautiful way to, I don't know, express ourselves. And even if I'm not an artist, I wish I were, but I really appreciate Indian art. But you know, it's a conversation. Like, thank you for saying, but it becomes a conversation piece where even though I didn't create the work, I can talk about it in a way that shares with someone who, a guest to my home or someone else, like today, you know, on our program today, learns a little bit about who we are as Choctaw people. And so I think those opportunities, you can't really do that through a handbag or, you know, a pair of shoes, but you can do that through your Indian artwork.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what we support too, is people investing in contemporary Indian artists and the stories that they're creating that are made to share with others.
Right.
Versus people buying what they call antiquities, right? The
Right.
things that were stolen and taken and looted over time and through violence and over the period of the vanishing Indian, right?
Right. So I will have to tell you just quickly, you know, you asked about a preview. Something I failed to really mention is, I brought it up, but the National Museum of the American Indian and First Americans Museum have a partnership. I actually signed the memorandum of understanding with Jim Pepper Henry, who was working on behalf of the National Museum and is now the director of First Americans Museum.
Right.
So it's so interesting how we signed this memorandum of understanding. I think it was like back in like 2008 or something, but long time, 2006, 2008. I know I have that wrong, but now he's implementing it as the director. But it's basically, we've curated on a long-term 10-year loan a number of objects in the Harrington collection with NMAI that were collected during a time after removal in Oklahoma, that were collected when there was a perception that, you know, the tribes here were going to be disappearing, like disappearing cultures.
Wow.
And they are objects that we will share in, you know, a temporary exhibition that explores the creation of these objects and the sense of cultural identity that were imbued, whether they were created with design elements that connected people with their identity, or whether they were made out of love, or to infuse an object with like stickball pants with the raccoon tails, or really cool, beautiful objects that really have a life of their own. They're like beings, actually. Like, we talk about them as beings, and then it gives an opportunity for us to, and then so we talk about them in their creation, but also their collection, why they were collected. But it's right in line with what you're saying, that this perception that there were disappearing cultures, or that, you know, it was a very difficult time, so people needed money, and so some people needed to sell their items to feed their families. To also the continuum that, you know, these are objects that they're connected. So we have, what is so exciting is we have commissioned pieces across the state from tribes that really relate to some of the objects of the collection, that share that we're still creating these objects today. They're still very much connected to how we express ourselves and participate in our cultural activities today and in the future. And so beautiful, beautiful objects or beings that are created. And we'll have somewhat of a reunion with family members and other community members that have not only advised us on this process, but are also connected to the origins of the pieces themselves, that were relatives of those who made them. So it's a really cool opportunity that I hope everyone can come to see, this temporary exhibition that will be on loan for 10 years, but it's in line with what you're saying too.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. And the fact that the First Americans Museum will have the control, right? And they're doing it with tribal consultation, and doing it in a good way to display and tell those stories, versus other institutions who just depend on themselves and the collector to tell the story. right?
Right. And that's how museums are changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This has been a great conversation, Gina. And I'm really excited about what's going on in Oklahoma. I mean, I left Oklahoma kind of never wanting to return. I did not want to be, my grandmother taught me, she's like, you're not gonna, it's not about men, it's not about having babies. You have to go to school. You have to, help your people. And so, she pushed me out. And she even told me, don't go back. Don't go back. We need you to go to school.
Right.
And so it took me a long time to come back. And I still have a strong desire to not live here in where the head of the serpent exists, but to go back home to Oklahoma and remember those places that were important and special to all of us over the last few hundred years, right? My grandmother used to take me travel. We used to take these long car drives, and she would show me where different homesteads were and where family graveyards were.
Mm-hmm.
And we would just go all over the Southeast, and she would show me places. It's many of those places are still there, actually. And some have even been cared for.
Right.
So it's interesting to still have connection with those places. That's been part of our history as Choctaw people, and also to reconnect. I'm so happy when the Oklahoma and Mississippi Choctaw and other bands come together, either through stickball or other social events and cultural events. Do you ever participate in any of those in Mississippi?
I haven't in Mississippi, but I in Oklahoma, I'm more of I look on. I like to look on.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I love working with our cultural resources stickball people on the program. It has brought communities together so beautifully. It's awesome. I mean, and kids are making their own sticks, and I think it has revitalized a sense of pride and identity that, Choctaw is like, proud to be Choctaw. I'm Choctaw. I'm proud to Choctaw. It's really been important. But, I know that, we need Choctaw people. We need Native people like you doing what you do. We need people on that field that are fighting that fight. Our Tushkahoma, our Red Warriors. It's, like I said earlier, our leaders made very difficult decisions, and we're still on that journey. And so it's a part of those 4 R's: that respect for that, but the responsibility, the opportunity we have to re-engage and to reconnect and to share that reciprocity, but and to understand our relationships with one another. And so the sacrifices that were made, that they're not in vain, that they're meant to move us forward and to continue to connect us. So I appreciate you. I appreciate that. And but yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, those identities through stickball and other opportunities throughout the state. It's great.
Yes, it is. Well, I'm going to wrap you up because I know you've had a long day, and I don't want to wear you out while it's still daylight. Give you some time to rest and recreate. I've really appreciated the time with you, Gina.
Thank
This
you
has
so
been
much.
great. Let's not have so much time in between our chats.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Yakoki. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great weekend.
Yakoki. I'm going to bring you down, but you're welcome to stay on and talk to me afterwards. But if you need to get going, feel free.
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you, Gina.
All right. Thank you.
Well, another episode, I think, what was this? 56? We're on our 56th episode at Red Hoop Talk. I want to just give you a couple of things to make sure that you're aware of. If you are connected in any way with a Native Youth Summer Camp organization or group and need a few extra bucks for that camp, we have funding available at the Association on American Indian Affairs. Go to our website, hit on what we do, and down to summer camps. We have funding, and the applications are due May 31st. So please apply. Also, our graduate and undergraduate Native American scholarships are still open until May 31st. And you must be a member or citizen enrolled with a federally recognized tribe or any other tribe that's not recognized, but that you have some kind of resolution letter or other that you're enrolled with your tribe that's state recognized or otherwise. We have something else going on. Oh yes, our 7th annual repatriation conference is coming up in November, but we've put out our proposals for people to submit session proposals if they'd like to present at our repatriation conference. And those are due on June 7th. So go to our website, indian-affairs.org, where you'll find all this information, and you'll find more information about our Red Hoop Talk. And by the way, next week on Red Hoop Talk will be again at 6 p.m. Eastern on Friday. We're going to have a group chat. So we're going to talk about spring renewal and what we're all doing to renew ourselves, come out of the darkness and into the spring and renew ourselves. So please join us for that. I think we're going to open up the chat line. So if anyone out there in the internets would like to join us live and on camera during the show next week, we'll be doing that. So thanks so much for your time and energy, Yokoki, and we'll see you next week. And watch this cool little ending video we have. See you later. Welcome to Red Hoop Talk, a Native news and talk show brought to you by the Association on American Indian Affairs. Don't be embarrassed.
Well, thanks for having me here, and thank you.
And I want to thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
It was really fun. Thank you for having us do this.
Again, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Good time to be Native.